For a while, Issei felt like he was adrift, sleeping in space. While he was unconscious from the shock of the fight, he began to dream. He saw visions of a war. Angels, demons, and fallen were clashing swords on the ground and in the air. Then dragons appeared on either side of the battlefield. A large red dragon from the west and a large white dragon from the east started fighting, interrupting the battle. The armies turned to confront the new threat, and his vision began to blur again to stabilize in a new location. Next, he was on a mountaintop, somewhere in the body of a black dragon, facing a yellow dragon in the sky above, yelling about her stolen treasure. Before he could ask what treasure, she blasted a torrent of golden flame at him, clouding his vision. Next, he was a young woman with green hair looking down at an ancient city on fire. A blue, green, and brown dragon were fighting each other, with citizens screaming around them, making tears fall from his eyes, blurring his vision again. Now he was back to being himself, but now he was in a rainbow-colored void facing a dragon so large, Issei's whole body wasn't as tall as his pupils. The dragon's mouth didn't move, but his voice was clear as day in his head. It spoke to him with the tone of an adult talking to his child. "Issei Hyudu, bearer of the Red Dragon Emperor, I have a task for you," grumbled his deep voice in his head. Issei couldn't move his body and was enveloped by fear. "Who are you?" Issei managed to stutter out in response. The dragon blinked and responded, "I am the primordial dragon god of dreams. They call me Great Red. You can call me Bahamut. I have a mission for you, Red Dragon Emperor. My kind has dwindled over time. Fewer dragons have been born, and the ones who lived have been hunted by others out of jealousy and fear. The devils and angels have taken to reverting humans to their kind to refill their ranks. I feel we can do the same. I need you to help in this mission." "Wait, but how am I to do that?" Issei said in panic. "I'm not even able dragon." "This may be true, however you do contain the power of a dragon, and if you so chose, you could transform into one as well. Our kind need to make a return if the world is to survive. Dark forces are trying to release my brother from his cage. If Trihexa is free, he will destroy all you know, and no deity will be able to stop him." Issei was filled with fear, thinking of an evil being as strong or stronger than the dragon he was talking to. The idea almost made him wet himself. Before Issei could respond, Bahamut started to vanish like a mirage as he spoke his last words. "Now my idiot children can help as well. I am sending you to one of them. She got themselves trapped here with me in the gap. In order to set her free, you will need a particular spell which I will grant you the knowledge on how to cast it. After I ask you to seek out my idiot son who got himself captured, I'll tell you how to find him later." After these words washed through his head, the giant dragon disappeared like a mirage, as Issei felt himself pulled to a floating chunk of land in the distance. As Issei got closer to the island, he could see a long Asian blue serpent dragon aggressively bashing itself into what appeared to be a force field, binding the dragon in place. Issei could hear the screams of frustration coming from within in an agitated roar that sounded feminine. Watching her hit the wall to bounce off and go to another part, to the shield to crash again, reminded Issei of a pool ball ricocheting as it hit the edges of the table. Issei tried to get the dragon's attention, but she was too loud in her cursing to hear Issei. This was solved by Dreg boosting aggressively and transferred to Issei's vocal cords for a loud shout of, "Calm the heck down!" The dragon finally stopped, still looking angry as it turned to face Issei. "You! Who are you? How are you outside of this field?" The dragon began to ramble, only for the voice of Dreg to calm her a bit as he answered her. "Calm yourself, dear sister. We have come to aid you in your time of need." The dragon looked to Issei's hand and spoke. "Dreg? Is that you? I heard you got your ass beat by the biblical faction as you and Albion spat at each other." She looked to Issei's face. "Why is your voice coming from this attractive human?" Dreg sighed in annoyance while Issei blushed at being called attractive. Wait, Issei thought. Wasn't she wildly lashing out like just a few seconds ago? What kind of personality does this dragon have? Dreg responded like an annoyed brother. Unfortunately, the three factions of that war defeated me and Albion while we were distracted and turned us into sacred gears. The dragon looked from the gauntlet to Issei. She then asked, "So how did you end up here? Though trapped in this barrier, it is also protecting B from the energy of the gap. If you're not careful, you will find yourself burned away from the raw energy around us." Issei didn't think about that and got worried. He looked at his arms and could see a faint red aura surrounding him. I think Bahamut put up a protecting spell on me. The dragon looked surprised. Dad sent you? Well, that's embarrassing. I was hoping I could get out of this before anyone found out. She mumbled the last part to herself in embarrassment. Issei was starting to change from fear of the chaotic dragon to thinking the sporadic behavior was funny. Well, he sent me here to, in his words, help save his idiot daughter. She then suddenly got a sad puppy eye look as she whined, even Dad doesn't think I can get out of here. It's not my fault that stupid wannabe hero was too much of a coward to face me herself. She brought a whole group of heroes, including one with a magic gear that bound me to this place, she screamed in frustration. Once agitated, Drake chastised her. Pull yourself together. You have no one to blame but yourself for flying around seeking heroes to pick on. You had this coming for a while now. Issei could see a fight beginning, so he decided to try and change the topic. Anyway, Ms. Dragon, I haven't properly introduced myself yet. My name is Issei Hyudu, currently the Red Dragon Emperor and host to Drake. Nice to meet you. The two calmed down, and the dragon turned to properly face Issei. My name is Tomoe, the Blue Dragon Empress, Baby Drake's older sister, the Dragon of the Lower Plains, ruler of Mirage and Spirit. We were made at the same time, idiot. You're not the older one, Drake began to argue. But Issei interrupted him. Enough bickering, you two? Listen, your dad sent me here to get you out, and it looks like you won't like how. Tomoe didn't like the sound of that, but seeing as she didn't have many other options and her dad commanded it, she gave in. Drake picked on her for being a daddy's girl as Issei lifted his hand. He called forth the memories Bahamut filled his mind with and began to chant. A giant spell circle surrounded the one Tomoe was in. It opened up into two spell circles forming along the dragon's prison along the X and Y axis. Then the two rings merged to completely encase the island in a sphere of magic lines, shapes, and symbols. Inside the sphere, a glowing ring like a halo surrounded Tomoe, and gears made of magic appeared around her as lines of light that reminded Issei of a craftsman's tools passed through her. Then as she began to glow, Issei put his hand in his pocket, instinctively following the instructions Bahamut left in his mind, and pulled out a pink gem that he didn't know was in his pocket. He also called forth the gauntlet that he used in his fight with the Fallen with his requip magic and tossed both into the spell. The chant continues as new spell circles appeared along the sphere, acting as conduits pulling energy from the gap to stabilize the spell's energy draw. After a few minutes, Tomoe began to glow, and the light that was the dragon went inside the pink gem. Then the gem floated to the gauntlet and rested into the back of the gauntlets, hand transforming it to match the color pattern of the dragon. As the light dimmed, it revealed that it now looked identical to Drake's but with a color change. And for the left hand, where Drake's was red, Tomoe's was teal, where Drake's was yellow. Hers was purple with her green gem just like her brother's in the back of the hand. As the spell concluded after what felt like an hour, where the island and dragon were before now just floated a gauntlet that quickly floated to Issei and attached to his exposed left hand. The first thing Issei heard from his new gauntlet was a sigh of defeat. I can't believe Daddy wanted me to become a sacred gear, Tomoe muttered like OS kid who had his game system confiscated. Issei felt sorry for her and tried to comfort her. At least you're technically free now, and together we can try and get out of this place. The dragon sniffled as she tried to appear composed again. Agreed. Yes, now let's get out of here. She explained that with her spiritual and mirage powers, she can create her own personal domain. All they needed to do was make one of her mirage gates with the help of Drake's boosts to counter the gap's interference. Issei followed her guidance, calling on her power like he has done with Drake before. At first time was strange. He was used to Drake's power, having used it for a while. It felt as if working in a desert for so long to suddenly working in a silly and foggy lakeside. He felt Tomoe's presence guiding him, and soon enough a mist ripples before him like a mirage, becoming denser, until what looked to be a gray tear of fog clustered before him. It was quickly disappearing, but before it could, he called on Drake, and a loud oost could be heard as energy transferred to the gate. Before he could loose his nerve, and with his new partner's encouragement, he jumped into the gate. At first, stepping into the gate felt like walking into a fence fog that was blowing past you at the speed of a train, but after a few seconds he was now standing in a vibrant green field. On the surrounding sides of the field, he saw a large forest, and in the distance he could see tall mountains. Where are we? Issei asked. Tomoe also sounded surprised. This is what I called my spirit plane. Normally for me it just looked like an empty fog-filled void that I would rest in. It would seem your influence caused it to transform to fit your needs as its new ruler, replied the bewildered dragon. What do you mean, new ruler? His new gauntlet's gem flashed with each word as his new partner spoke. As you are the bearer of my gear, my power is now yours and it obeys you now. The power reflects the user. I only cared for battle and training, so all I needed was a place to rest and train, but the realm felt it should provide you a place you would find more comfortable. So how do we get back to Earth? Issei said. Tomoe explained that the Issei plane, as she now started calling it, was its own dimension like Earth, Heaven, or Hell. And just as he opened a door to it in the gap, as long as he pictured where he wanted to go, he should be able to create a door to it, but he needs to be able to picture it in his head clearly. Issei gave it a try. He lifted his hand again and pictured the office of the Gremory group, and a gate appears before him. The Gremory team was in the middle of a strategy meeting with the Citri team when a strange fog began to gather along one wall. They stepped back in shock with Kiba, Akino, and Koneko standing protectively in front of their. King and Citri's team did the same, only to see a familiar brown hair boy step out of the fog like there was a hole in the wall behind it. Rias shouted his name in relief and tackled him in a bear hung unbecoming of her normal noble demeanor. "You're alive!" she shouted, crying in relief. Soon Issei was bombarded with questions. After he managed to get everyone settled down, he explained what happened to him after the slash, leaving out the full details of Great Red and his request, just saying he bonded with a dragon trapped in the gap, and together they managed to escape using the teleportation mist they just saw. Issei also didn't want to mention his new personal dimension just yet, until he figured out just what he wanted to do with it. "That's crazy, bro," the blonde pawn of Citri said, surprised that he not only went to the gap, but survived. Yudo also nodded, agreeing with Songi. "The gap is raw energy. Most people that travel there without a barrier can only last a few minutes, much less days." "What do you mean days?" Essie said in a panic. "Oh, you don't know, do you? Time in the gap isn't stable. Sometimes time while you're in it moves faster than outside of it, and sometimes it moves slower. In this case, I'm afraid it must have moved faster for you because for us, you have been missing for 3 days, Akeno explained. Issei was stunned at the information. "I have to go see my parents. They must be worried sick." Before he could get up, Rias calmed him down. "Don't worry, I took the liberty of hypnotizing your parents to make them think you went camping with your friends in a place your phone probably wouldn't have signal." With a sigh of relief, Issei sat back down. "Thank you," he said gratefully to the red-headed princess. The girl with the short black hair and glasses that showed up to aid their fight with the stray priests pushed up her glasses. I think we should properly introduce ourselves. My name is Sona Citri, student council president of Ko High School, next heir of the Citri household, and Rias's best friend." She gestured to the taller girl with glasses and longer black hair. "This is my queen Tsubaki Shinra, and my pawn Genshiru Saji." Before Issei could properly respond, his new gear flashed on his left hand, and its pink gem began to glow as Tomoe began to talk. "That's one smells like a dragon. He should be fun." "Wait! You said you ran into a dragon in the gap and combined your powers to escape. You didn't say it became a second sacred gear for you," the Citri king said in shock. The rest of the group also looked shocked as Issei's other gauntlet appeared on his other hand. The other gem with Drake's voice spoke up. "Tomoe, we told you to stay quiet in front of others until we deemed it okay," the male dragon grumbled, annoyed. The pink gem started to strobe out in a low dim of light. "Oops," she stammered out in shock. A collective imaginary seemed to appear one everyone's hees and drop a few inches. The tall Citri Queen Tsubaki took a breath and asked what the rest were thinking. "Mr. Hyudu, how exactly did you end up with 2 sacred gears? It's never happened before." Akino spoke up to help explain why everyone was surprised. "Issei, it's unheard of for anyone to have more than 1 sacred gear. Sacred gears not only are granted only to humans or people who are at least half human, but they never choose someone who already has a gear." The voice of Drake spoke from his right hand. "I brought this up before we came back. That's why we tried to get my idiot sister to stay hidden until it was necessary," he said in clear annoyance. Feeling guilty for blowing her cover, Tomoe tried to cover for Issei to make up for it. "I was already a gear in the gap," the dragon lied. "My previous user got trapped in the gap and died unable to draw out my power and was exposed to the gap to long until there was nothing left but me. As my soul and gear was in the gap, I couldn't latch onto another user until Issei appeared in the gap with me, allowing me to latch onto him, and with our powers together we escaped," finished the silver-tongued dragon. As she spoke her explanation, Issei could feel her power coming out the gauntlet. As he looked up, he could see the wavy air around the heads of his comrades, as if a mirage formed across the room. To Issei and Drake's surprise, the group nodded to the lie. Ria spoke for the group. "That makes sense." Issei communicated to Tomoe in his thoughts. "What did you just do?" Tomoe sounded smug in her response. "I just used my power to help them see things less clearly, we will say. My power is based in mirage magic, one of the 7 fundamental forces of magic, and illusion and hypnotism is tied into that magic." After Issei and the dragons managed to evade the whole story of his time in the gap, he moved the conversation back to the events of the day he left. "So what happened with the stray priests, the holy sword users, and the 2 priests that came to help them?" Issei questioned. Kaneko, normally quiet, spoke. "The dirtbags ran," she said in a tone that suggested she wanted to get more hits in on them. Kiba continued for her. "The group pushed us back while we were impacted by your disappearance, and a fallen general arrived and commanded them to retreat. The 2 exorcists from the church left to make a report on the events of the day." Issei was frustrated after hearing this. Then the room got quiet. Issei looked around to see most avoiding his eyes. Rias came and sat beside him, and as if knowing her next move, the dragons called back the gauntlets, bringing Issei's hands back to normal, as Rias took them in her own hands. "Issei, Irina told us you used to be friends after the battle. I'm sorry to tell you this, but after you disappeared, she was in shock, leaving an opening for one of the demonic sword users to strike." Her eyes filled with tears. "I'm afraid she is in critical condition." Issei froze in shock. He just got to reunite with her, and they are telling him that he might lose her before he can talk to her properly again. "Where is she?" Issei said in an urgent tone. The group looked at him sympathetically. "They evacuated her to the best emergency hospital in Japan, that new one in Tokyo, Arnor Royal Hospital." Without much thought, Issei got up and ran out the door. The group looked downcast at seeing the look in his eyes. As Issei ran, he couldn't stop thinking of memories of his time with Irina. As kids, they were the best of friends. He didn't even know she was a girl back then because she played with him like any other boy, hunting for bugs, fishing, or even just playing in mud. By the time he not only left the old schoolhouse grounds, but the current schools as well. He then started to think of something he didn't initially take notice before being caught up in all Thyre questions. The Gremory and Citri teams had bandages covering parts of their bodies. He was sure Ausia's healing already took most of their wounds away, but they were all still banged up. Issei got filled with emotions, panic at his childhood friend's condition, worrying over her and the state of his friends, and guilt over not being there to stop it. By the time he made it to the main street, he finally realized he could use his new gate powers to shorten the trip. Just before he stopped to open a gate, a voice called out to him in panic. When Issei followed the call, it led to a traumatizing scene. Floating above him was a sight that he couldn't explain. Floating above him was his 2 friends from school. Matsuda and Motohama were being held by the necks in the air by a person in white dragonic armor. "Matsuda! Motohama!" Issei shouted, stopping in the middle of the street. "Just who are you? Let go of my friends!" The knight looked at him as if studying him. The cold blue visors that covered his eyes seemed to pierce right through him. A surprisingly young-sounding voice around his age came from the helmet. Kokabeel said someone sporting the red dragon was on the battlefield helping the devils. I was frustrated that I missed my chance to finally fight my fated rival, only to find out you were still barely able to use him. I figured to get the proper fight, I desire you needed proper motivation to grow. His tone went from arrogant disappointment to cocky as if he was a king talking to a peasant. Issei's friends shout in panic, saying things like, "Help me, Issei, call 911, what's going on, how are we flying?" and so on. As they wailed, the knight made a swift motion with his wrists and Issei heard it. The sound of necks snapping, Issei froze, unable to move. The night let go, and time seemed to slow as his two perverted friends' bodies slowly fell to the ground. Images of their time together flashed before his eyes as it turned into all the times since Raynor that he turned down times to hang out. The thoughts of lost time with them then flashed to the panic memories of learning about this world, of Raynor and her trying to kill him, the fight with the Fallen, getting slashed with the Holy Sword, the loneliness of the gap and the fear of not getting home, seeing the devils all bandaged up, the thoughts of Irina fighting for her life in the hospital, and finally back to the snap. As Issei saw their limp bodies hit the ground, the world turned red. There was this quick spell released, he would later find, was Tomoe casting a spell to hide the upcoming fight in a mirror dimension, like the kind in Doctor Strange movie. Issei let out such a primal roar that waves of energy erupted from his body like several tsunamis of sound, making the whole town shake. Both gauntlets appeared on his arms. Then from them a blue and teal light crawled up his body until the white knight couldn't see him. Only a purple melding of the two colors with occasional pulses of green, flashing along with Drake's voice shouting, "Boost!" The wave of energy was so strong the mirror spell started to have cracks in it. When the light subsided, no longer was a scrawny teenager but a full-sized dragon. The dragon looked somewhat in between the Chinese serpent of Tomoe's form and the European classic of Drake. The torso was longer than Drake's, with a really long tail like Tomoe's. His neck rose at least 5 stories high and a head the size of a house. The body was covered in purple scales that randomly changed back to teal or red infrequently. Large pink and green gems pulsed around his body, along with a mirage that radiated heat as juts of flames occasionally flared from beneath his scales. The asphalt under him began to melt from the heat and pressure. The dragon's eyes were glowing red with rage as he let out another roar, casting fire with it, mixed with a strange gray energy. This was not what the knight expected. The blast hit him head-on, being stunned to focus. The blast blew him back into a building in such a way his armor broke apart. Underneath was a tall teenager with spiked emo white hair and a leather jacket and burgundy pants. His gear's wings still on his back glowed blue with energy. A dragon's voice came from the wings as he stood back up. "You went too far, Vali. He is in a juggernaut state and in a blind rage. If he keeps this up, he will destroy the whole district. He also has merged with strange energy. He should be red. Something is not right," worried the dragon. It would seem he was building up on emotions before I added to it. My goal was to trigger his balance breaker, not go straight to Juggernaut. Valley said, looking down at the raging Issei, who was currently destroying everything in sight. Valley called his balance breaker back on and dove at Issei. The dragon let loose another silver flame his way. Valley, now prepared, instantly started dividing the energy of the flame with his gear. His partner Albion, the white dragon of the south, shouted "divide" as a blue pulse of energy clashed with the flame, shrinking it down. He then cast a wave of ice to clash with it. The battle raged on as Issei screamed in rage, internally losing all control of himself. Drake and Tomoe couldn't reach him. The mirror dimension of the city of Ko was covered in silver flames, ice, and rubble. The fight continued for an hour with Issei not slowing down. Then from outside the mirror spell, he could hear her, "Issei," that single voice piercing through the pain. Tomoe saw the opportunity, and the pink gems on his body glue as the veil between the pocket dimension became transparent, until it dispersed, revealing the crimson hair princess shouting for Issei. Seeing her shouting for him in clear worry transferred the feelings of rage into sorrow. The dragon roared until he transformed back into himself. The roar slowly went from dragon shout to wails of sorrow from a teenager. As he shifted, the realm shattered away as the spell dispersed. The realm disappeared and the town looked the same as before. He transformed. The only trace of anything happened was a crying boy on his knees, head looking to the sky as 2 teenagers lay dead before him, eyes empty with necks bent at an unnatural angle. Rias could now hear the crying as the spell disappeared and say Issei, and ran to him. She say what lay before him and enveloped him in an embrace. "It's okay, Issei. I'm here. You are not alone." The rain began to fall as Issei leaned his head into her shoulder as he couldn't hold it in anymore as he cried into the night.